the game would look set up with two players. Remember, this is a co-op game. You're not going against each other. But what you're going to do is you're going to first take the deck and you're going to set out infection cubes just based off of what the rulebook tells you to do. Each person is going to start with some city cards in their hand, 2 cards apiece. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have the outbreak meter at 0, and then we're going to have the infection rate at 2. And I'll explain what those mean here in just a minute. Each person is then going to take on the role. The role tells you the name up here, an illustration, the color pawn you'll be taking, and some benefits that this character does that are special to him that typically break the rules of the game. For instance, the medic can remove all the cubes in a single spot for 1 action, whereas everybody else could only remove 1 cube for 1 action. Each turn that you get, you're going to get 4 actions. Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to cure all 4 diseases to win the game. No, that does not mean you have to remove every single one of the cubes, though that would be nice, wouldn't it? But all you're trying to do is you're trying to collect 5 cards of the same color. Then you're also trying to build a research station in each one of the 4 colors. Get to that research station, turn these cards in to cure each one of the 4 diseases. Now, we start out with a research center already built in Atlanta, so the blue area on the board already has a research center for it. However, you are going to have to build a research center in the yellow, the black, and also the red. So let me show you how you do that. To be able to do it, you just have to be standing in, let's use Los Angeles as an example, seems how I do have this card. So as long as I am in Los Angeles, and I do have the card for Los Angeles, I could build the research facility there. To move from one city to another, that would count as 1 action. So for me to go to Atlanta, I'd have to follow these red lines, go to Chicago, then go to Los Angeles. That would be my 2nd action. Turn this card into the discard pile, and then I could build a research facility on Los Angeles right there. Now yellow would be covered, so once we get 5 cards for yellow, we could go back to this research facility, turn them in, and cure the yellow disease. You can also fly between areas. For instance, let's say that if I wanted to fly to Los Angeles, I could actually discard this card and immediately go to Los Angeles. Now, you want to be very careful about that, though, because you don't want to get rid of too many of your city cards. You have to remember, there's only so many cards of the certain color. There's only 1 of each city. So if you discard these, they will never be shuffled back into the deck, which I'll explain that in just a minute. But I could fly there, and that would count me as an action. I would also be able to fly anywhere I wanted to in the world if I actually had the card Atlanta in my hand. So if I had, say if this was Atlanta, I could discard that card and I could fly anywhere I wanted to. Now, what I would want to do is I'm going to try to go around the board and I'm going to try to remove these cubes, set up my research facilities, collect as many cards as I can. Now, you do have a hand limit of 7, so you have to be very careful that your hand management, that you're not getting rid of cards, because you will always have to discard down. So if I wanted to move, it would count me as an action. But let's say if I was here and if I was the medic, I could actually, for 1 action, remove both of these cubes. Like I said, anybody else could only remove 1. So I'd want to try to get the medic in an area where there would be the most infection cubes, because that's where he does the best work. The other thing you can do is you can trade cards with your opponent. However, you both have to be in the same city as the card, so it's very difficult to try to trade cards. So let's say for 4 actions, he moves right over to here, and then that would be the end of the medic's turn. So he's going to set himself up here to be able to eventually try to remove these cubes. What he would do then is he would draw 2 cards off the deck. Now notice we have our typical city card. He could add that to his hand, but now we've got special event cards. There's several of these special event cards, and these are terrific, and you want to try to make sure you hang on to them and use them at the right time. But they will help you out greatly, and once again, they typically break the rules of the game. Now that we've drawn our 2 cards off of here, we would then follow the infection rate meter, which would tell us to flip over 2 cards. And then we'd see what city it is, so that's Lima, and we would add 1 infection to each one of those cities that was flipped over. So Lima is right there, and then we'd flip over the next one, was Sao, and we would add an infection cube to there. Then it would be the scientist's turn, and he would do the exact same thing. But what will eventually happen is that you're going to come across, when you're drawing your 2 cards, you're going to come across an epidemic, and this is bad. Now what this does is that you're going to increase the meter up here of the infection rate, because this tells you with the numbers down at the bottom how many cards you're going to always flip off of here. So as you notice, we start 2, 2, 2, then 3, 3, and then 4 and 4. So it gets generally harder and harder the more of these you flip over to try to cure these diseases before bad things happen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to increase that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to infect. And what that means is we're going to take the bottom card off of this deck. We're going to look at it, Chicago, and we're going to add 3 disease cubes to that city. Now, to make matters worse, we're going to shuffle all these cards back together place them back on top of this deck, and then we're going to flip over whatever the infection rate says. So, for instance, Hong Kong, we have to add 1 of these cubes, and then Sydney, we'd have to add another one. So it gets really rough the more of these that you draw. However, there's other things that could happen to you as well, and these are outbreaks. Outbreaks occur whenever too many cubes are in a particular city. So for instance, we have 3 cubes up here in Beijing. If ever I was to flip over the Beijing, which is now on top of this deck again, because we had to shuffle the discard pile into the draw pile, then if I ever had to add a cube to there, I would never actually place the 4th one there. What would happen then is an outbreak. An outbreak occurs whenever there's already 3 and you have to add a 4th cube. So what I'd have to do then is add a cube to any of the connected cities. So Shanghai and Seoul would both get a cube, and I would increase this little meter just like that. The game ends in several different ways. You only win if you cure all the diseases. So if you ever get 5 cards of blue, get back to the research center, turn those cards in, you would take this and move it down. Then once you get all the other ones, hey, good, you win the game. However, you lose the game if ever you run out of cards to draw from this pile, if ever the outbreak meter reaches 8, or if you ever cannot place a disease cube on the board. So let's say there's too many yellow cubes that are already on the board, and you have to put a yellow cube on because you drew it from the top of the infection card pile, say such like that. And then let's say you flipped it over. Oh, I don't have any to put on Lima. Therefore, we lose the game.